Security Halt Podcast. Simple podcast for dudes, by dudes, but not for by dudes, just especially veterans. Security Halt, you take a knee, face out, sit down for a little bit, and chill out. Listen to us, Cab, Paul, and Greg, say some really stupid shit that'll make you laugh and smile. Security Halt. It's what you doctor ordered, or gynecologist, or perhaps the doctor that looks at your beehole.
There's only one rule. It's mimosas by 11. There's only one rule. Mimosas by 11.
That's the single greatest thing you've ever said. And I would even say it's the brave.
Like, this is probably going to be some horseshit propaganda for China. The news is like, hey, for some reason people think this is horseshit propaganda for China.
Valid point, Paul, but where else are people going to get riveting content and a consistent list of kill, marry, and fuck? I mean, no one's doing it, and someone has to provide it for the people. And that someone is us, Security Halt Podcast.
A lot going on.
And we are live. Thank you, Craig, for recording this session. Sadly, Gregory and Paul are not with us today. Due to an unfortunate methamphetamine boofing accident, Greg's in the hospital. And Paul, he's just super busy with work. He's a model citizen, but that Gregory, I tell you, just a bag of bad apples covered in shit. No.
Oh, jeez.
Greg is hard at work, and so is Paul. And unfortunately, you have to deal with me.
I'll do what I can.
Oh, last time on Security Halt, Dr. Professor Murphy joined us and gave us a riveting life tale of all the horrible things one could do to oneself.
Yeah, that was your manual for how to put yourself on a crash course with yourself.
But that's okay. We've all done it. Myself, Paul, and Greg are well versed in sabotaging our lives. But in part 2, we have to focus on all the good, all the wonderful stuff that came from the Great Awakening. So please, without further ado, Dr. Professor Murphy, continue your tale.
Yeah, so it was funny, after we got off last time, I was thinking about that, and I was like, God, I feel like I just dumped all the chaotic, shitty stuff that's ever happened, and that's not even all of it. That's the fun part.
That's life, right? That's life.
Yeah.
We get so accustomed to seeing the TV shows where everything's absolutely perfect, which then puts us into a tailspin when we realize, why am I so fucked up? It's just life.
And the reality is, life's just, it's not linear either, right? You're moving along, and it feels like, because time is a fucking construct of our mind, that things happen sequentially, but they really don't.
Yeah.
As you're moving forward, you experience stuff, and it spins you back to something you've already done. And, my therapist said the other day, she this, just, the oldest fucking analogy in the book. She's like, well, it's like an onion. And I'm like, it's fucking analogy again, How many times have I thought that?
Why could I escape from this?
I know. Well, and and we were talking about the nature of just having to kind of rehash things, you feel like you've learned your lesson with something, and then you got to rehash it. And so, I think when I was working on my doctorate, I think that's when that perspective really hit home for me. And we were studying complexity theory as a leadership principle, and, understanding the nature of leadership, and how, just very not straightforward it really is when you're working with people and situations, because, new information, new experiences, new insights are coming forward all the time. And they're coming from all these different sources. And, as a leader, it's your job to figure out what the fuck's important and what's not, and what do you use, what do you don't, and all that stuff. And so complexity became a really big magnet point for me in my studies, because to me, as fucked up as this sounds, complexity helped me make sense of my life because that was the first system I'd ever seen. It looked like a bunch of spaghetti thrown against a wall, and then a 2-year-old got their hands in it, and I was just like, "That's my life right there."
This makes sense.
Yeah, like this chaos has an odd kind of logic to it for me. Which was really funny because when we got to that class, like most of my professors knew me by that point. They're like, "Yeah, we're not surprised you like this." It's kind of like, it's like my mom's reaction to me telling her I had PTSD. She's like, "You didn't know that?" I'm like, how do these people in my life know this shit about me? And I don't. So, and I think one of the benefits I've had from the different experiences I've had in my life is that I do have a really fairly high level of self-awareness and not even just self-awareness, but curiosity about myself and what's going on and why I'm thinking the way I do. But either way, to kind of focus on a couple of the bigger threads with that, one of the things I think that did, serve me well from the things that I experienced when I was growing up is, I think there's a couple of things that came out of that. One is I developed a fierce sense of independence and an ability to take care of myself. And that has, really, I think, helped me to move through a lot of stuff that, may have brought other people to their knees. I'm not going to say it would bring other people to their knee, all people to their knees, but certainly, some people. And I think that it's given me a little bit of confidence to know that I'm pretty fucking capable of doing whatever the hell I want, quite frankly.
That's a great feeling, right?
And it really is. And it's, and it's not that there's not moments of like insane self-doubt. I don't know that any human completely gets away from that, but certainly, like there's absolutely been times in my life where like I'm just like, well, can I? And I'm like, well, fuck yeah, why not? Like, why can't I? And I think that, one of the biggest ones that really crystallized for me was, I think I talked about this last time, but when I left my job at Rockwell Collins, I probably shouldn't say the business name, but either way, I was working for this.
Right. I guarantee no one from there is listening to the poop and cum joke show.
Right. Well, a lot of ex-military work there. But either way, I was working for them, largest employer in the area. Lots and lots of aerospace and defense programs. I was on an amazing trajectory from a career perspective. They kept wanting to promote me. I was held in really high esteem. I kicked ass on every project I was ever put on. And I was, I got to this point where I had a choice to go and start my own business and kind of do the thing I'd always wanted to do. And I know I shared my ex-husband's reaction, but that sense of like somebody telling me I can't do it and me saying, fuck you, yes, I am, like that came. When I was in the 5th grade, my 5th grade teacher said, nobody in my class makes honor roll. And I was like, in my brain, like the fuck they don't. And so I made honor roll.
This bitch.
Yeah. And, and so it's like the best way to get me to do something is to tell me not to do it. So that's maybe not a good life lesson, but
write that down, kids.
Everybody live that way. And so, so that was really the thing that I think I called on when I was like, I am not going to let fear dictate this decision. And that really was what that turned into, was fear doesn't get to be the decision maker in my life. Other people don't get to dictate to me what I'm going to do in my life. Now, the other side of that, though, is like, I know this, I have this knowledge, but the other side of me is like, you're fucking weak, you can't do it. There's like this other insecure side of me that's, back talking and is being a whiny little bitch. And so I described, when I got sober, I did a lot of speaking in public in AA. I do a lot of public speaking anyway, but I've told my story thousands and thousands of times, I feel like, from a recovery standpoint. But I always described it as, I don't know if you remember this scene from Steel Magnolias, but they're like 2 of the women, I can't even tell you which characters they were. They're like watching this other older lady dance and her ass is just like moving around under her skirt. And she's like, it's like 2 pigs fighting under a blanket. And I was like, that's how it feels inside of me sometimes.
I have been waiting for a guest to bring up Steel Magnolias. You have not disappointed. If you bring up Golden Girls, that's
dude.
it.
Yeah.
You've
Well,
made. We'll officially cancel the podcast because that's all I want. Steel Magnolias and Golden Girls references.
and you promised me we'd talk about Hillary Clinton's nipples. So like, we're not even to the good stuff yet, right?
Oh God. I promise you at the very end, that's gonna be it.
So I mean, I think, that moment when I was like, no, I am gonna go do this business. Like I was convinced to figure out a way, to go and do it. And so I put together the business plan. I called on my family and I was like, this is how this is gonna work and this is what I'm gonna do. And my ex-husband was still just like, I mean, that's why he's my ex-husband, but he was still just like, I don't see how this is going to work, and he just never got there. I mean, truth of the matter. And at the end of the day, that's okay. Like, yeah. I am happy we are divorced. Like that is not a bad thing for me.
Yeah.
I think we do a great job most of the time co-parenting our son, probably better than we parented as a married couple, quite frankly. And so, yeah, so I think that, that idea of, learning that I can do good shit on my own and I don't need someone else to be a part of that has also driven a lot of people to be attracted to me for partnerships and advice and, business stuff. And that's really kind of how I got into that relationship to have my own business.
Yeah.
But, a couple other lessons that I learned when I was a kid was that one narrative that developed for me when I was a kid was that I can't trust women.
Really?
Yeah, that was a very interesting narrative that I mean, I'll be honest, I still continue to work through that to this day. But that is, I was bullied horribly as a kid. And as a fifth grader, not as like my whole childhood, actually some really great friends, in my childhood, but I was bullied in the fifth grade and it was like my very best friend in the whole wide world just decided overnight that she hated me. And that turned into like a physical abuse, an emotional abuse, just a terrible thing and you think about where you are in fifth grade, right? You're like, you're starting to, develop your identity. You're starting to figure out that there's maybe a little bit beyond the house you grew up in, that there's a bigger world out there. And, and she took some things that were very private to my home and made them very public. And, things that just weren't pretty, quite honestly. And, really hurt my mom. Like, I mean, just like, and it was a bad deal. And so, that planted a seed in my head that I don't really trust women. And it took a lot for me to really bond with my next, couple of best friends and who I am still actually in touch with today, which is kind of cool. And one of them, like through my high school years, kind of became my second family. Because her family could go do things like go out on the lake on the boat or go camping or go on vacations or, do these things that my family just quite frankly couldn't afford. Yeah. And so Bob and Mary they kind of took me into their family. In fact, they called me their favorite daughter. It's just kind of a joke thing, between all of us. And it never bothered my best friend either. That was not a hurtful, like passive aggressive thing or anything. But,
you're not our daughter anymore. Go away.
That's one thing that
we always like focus on boys. Boys are bad. Boys will beat each other up. Like girls are cutthroat. Holy shit,
fucking vicious. Fucking vicious. And that was a theme that I got to experience and re-experience for through several iterations of trying to be friends with women over the years. Mm-hmm. And in high school, I was dating a guy, and this gal called me one day, and she's like, he's cheating on you with me, and this was a woman I thought I was friends with, and so it was just like that kind of shit. So, I mean, fuck the guy, like he was clearly a piece of shit, but like this person that I thought was my friend, and so. I formed this narrative, and it continued to be reinforced by my experiences. And so when I went in, and so this ties back to that idea of going into business with myself and feeling really independent with things, because I went into this business with 14 other women, all kind of independent contractors. And I thought I was very well supported. And I thought that these people were my friends. And I thought that these were really strong bonds. And at the end of the day, they just fucking weren't. as I went into my divorce, what the story that I started to develop and I started to recognize was that when I'm in drama and chaos, and this was reinforced by every experience I had had to date, when I'm in drama and chaos, people love that shit. Like they want to dig into it. They want to be a part of it. They want to like be part of the story and, all this stuff. And they, and like there's a certain amount of like flattery to that, a certain amount of ego boost of like these people want to be around me and these people seem cool. So if I can keep being dramatic, they'll still want to be with me. And that's just not a good way to form relationships.
No.
And and so, as my life started to get better, I became less interesting. And these people kind of started to reject me and they started to judge me for wanting to make money in my business. And this is a story that I'm telling now. I'll be very honest, they may have a very different story and perspective on all of this. And I think that's something too important to remember when we're thinking about the interactions we've had with other people. And we're like, they fucked us. Well, maybe like you feel like they fucked you and maybe they did, but maybe not. And that's how I always try to kind of caveat some of this shit because I have a story with this, but their story may be different.
Yeah.
And so in fact, like one of those gals was a really good friend of mine. She was the wife of my sponsor. So I had a male sponsor in AA, which most people will tell you is like the worst possible idea in the world, right? Because
what if there's an attraction?
Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, like not everybody can handle that. You are sharing some incredibly intimate stuff about yourself with another human being, and there are absolutely people who will consciously prey on that.
Yeah.
And then people who just don't have those kind of filters or boundaries that will prey on that. And so my sponsor was not a predator. We had a very great relationship. I had a good relationship with both him and his wife. And she was one of the women that I went into this business with. And, the thing that broke my heart the most about that whole thing was losing her friendship as a part of that. Yeah. And, over the process of time and, really examining what has happened with that and thinking about my part in some stuff and asking myself some tough questions, like I reached out to her a few weeks ago and was just like, let's go have dinner and clear the air on this. Because like, I don't want this to be in the midst of you and I anymore. I don't even know what it is. I don't know how to describe what's between us, and I want to clear the air. I just got a tattoo from her brother 2 weeks ago. Her brother's a phenomenal tattoo artist, and I got another tattoo from him a couple weeks ago. And so, like, there's just connections. And I think that being able to move forward in my life has been a big thing. Is recognizing that things evolve. I change, other people change. Like I need to recognize what I want in my life and what I don't want in my life. So
that can be said for a lot of us out there.
Right. And it's, and I think it's that narrative of she fucked me over, therefore I can't trust her, started in the 5th grade. Yeah. And, I had a few friends in the military that were that same kind of way that I experienced, that just, we were great friends. And then, I don't know, maybe I looked at her boyfriend wrong or something, or he looked at me wrong and, now we're not friends anymore. And I just, that kind of petty bullshit, I attributed to being a female characteristic, right or wrong, but that's what I did. And I didn't like it. Like I'm a fairly direct, open, blunt person most of the time. And not all women are. So like, I tend to find the ones that are like me, and those are my friends. Like those are the people that I want to be around, or people who will be direct. But either way, so, a lot of lessons from my childhood, kind of followed me through. When I recovered from alcoholism, I was, and this was just another, piece that I learned, that kind of propelled me forward, was I got sober. Like I stopped drinking while I was deployed to Qatar. And I was there, I think, for 30 days sober, went back to Bragg, and then, spent a while there. And I had a sponsor that, like, she got me to my 4th step, which is where you write down all the shit that you've done that have hurt other people, and yourself, really, but just that whole inventory. And I swear to God, that fucking saint. I held her hostage in her master bedroom for like 8 hours, like telling her my entire fourth step. I don't know if it was 8 hours, but it was a long day. And her husband was a special operations guy as well, and he was like out in the living room asleep on the couch. I felt so bad. But did that and then like didn't feel better. And I had done a fourth step with my priest when I was in Doha, my first one, and it was super funny because I laid all this shit out for him, and he's like sitting there, and I tell him all this stuff, and he goes, "Okay, how about like 12 Hail Marys?" And I'm just like. I'm like, I feel like that's not how this is supposed to go, but okay. So like I went to my Hail Marys, like a good little newly minted Catholic. And yeah, it was so weird. And so, I did this thing and what I found in sobriety and I think this is an important piece to share because I think people need to know that when you're dealing with alcoholism as part of anything else you're dealing with or if you're just dealing with alcoholism, like just not drinking isn't a fucking enough.
Right.
Like just like if you are truly alcoholic, just stopping is not going to solve your problem. Because what I found myself at with 18 months of sobriety, I found myself suicidal. Driving down the road, I had a Chevy Z71 at the time, big full size one. And I was driving at it's First Avenue here in our town. And First Avenue is like it's bar after bar after bar. Like you can't swim the cat like without hitting a bar. And I'm driving up First Avenue. I had just left an AA meeting, and I was at this AA meeting, and I'm looking at the people in the meeting, and inside of myself, I am like screaming for help. Like I am so fucking desperate, but I can't ask. Like everything within me tells me I'm a strong, independent person, and I don't fucking need anybody. And so I'm like, I can't ask anybody. And I'm looking at people that I know would be sympathetic if I just said I need help. I'm not going to fucking talk to them. And so I walk out of there and I'm like, fuck this. I'm drinking. I'm fucking done. I don't care if I ruin my life. I am more miserable right now than I've ever been in my life. And I'm going to go drink, and I'm going to drink until I can drive my fucking truck off a bridge because I'm fucking done. And, and I'm just like in my head, like, I'm not even calling anybody. I'm not calling my parents to say goodbye. Like none of this shit. I'm just fucking done. And so I'm driving up First Avenue, and I can't find a bar to save my fucking life. Like no bars are showing up for me. And I'm like,
someone's
God.
actually looking out in the
Oh
universe.
My God. I mean, if you're ever going to believe in a higher power, there was a higher power at work that night because what I did see was the goddamn AA club that's on that same street. And so I'm like, oh, fuck, fine. And so I go to the AA club, and I knew there was an 8:00 candlelight meeting that night. This was a Friday night.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and there's a couple of old timers, and then this other a guy who was a friend of mine, and it's all because that's my life. And I walk in, and one of them looks at me, and he goes, "Oh, you're just not okay, are you?" No, I'm really not. And so,
yep, you are correct.
Yeah. And I just proceed to sit there and just lose my shit. I mean, and just cry and bawl and everything else. And, so I leave there and I'm okay. And some phone calls get made while I'm there behind, like that I'm not aware of. And I get in my truck, and I get a phone call from a guy that I can't remember if we were dating or broken up. It was one of those fucked up dump trucks meeting in the night kind of relationships. Can only be beautiful in AA. And he called me, and he's just like, "What's going on? How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah." I pull into my garage, and my neighborhood was really big on garage parties, and he comes over and he grabs me, and he's like, come over and have a drink, and blah, blah, blah. And I tell you what, if I'd been there an hour and a half earlier, I'd have gone and drunk with him.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Give me a beer, But I think, what I got out of that was, a huge lesson in asking for help, and a huge lesson in the fact that if you do say something, people will do something. You know, the right people will do something. And that was a huge turning point in my mindset around what I can and can't ask for. Now, that doesn't mean that I still am it doesn't mean that I all of a sudden became good at asking for help, because I'm still super shitty at it. But like, I've learned for the big stuff that I need to raise my goddamn hand and say that I need help. And so, you know, those are, you know, some of the lessons. But you know, this whole time, I'm also on this spiritual kind of development journey. You know, I shared a little bit about the fact that my parents were kind of in this metaphysical community, and that exposed me to a lot of stuff when I was a kid that was really positive, actually, because it taught me how to tune into energies, and it taught me how to pay attention to, like, you know, what we tend to refer to as the vibe of people, you know, and what have people got going on. But I also did some really crazy shit, like, you know, when I was like 4 or 5, I did my first like past life journey, right? Whether you believe in that stuff or not, like I experienced this past life journey where I got told about my, you know, who I was in a former life. And
holy shit.
You know,
what was that like?
It was crazy. And so, it's such a weird thing to think about, but I'm a little kid, and I had this uncle that I just always felt really distant from. Like, I never really liked him. I never really wanted to be around him. There was just something about him that, it wasn't that he was like creepy. There wasn't anything weird like that. It was just like, I didn't want to be around him. And so this past life story that comes up is that he and I were siblings in a former life, and we were like Little House on the Prairie time frame is the visual that came forward. And it was, we were playing in the barn and knocked over a lantern. And as we were trying to put it out, you know, he's throwing more hay on the fire to smother it. And
as you would, yes.
You know, as a little kid, you know, like, I don't know. But yeah, so, you know, totally wrong thing to do, obviously, in a hay fire. Don't do that at home, kids. And so, so supposedly my dress caught fire and we burned to death.
Oh, shit.
And
that's heavy.
Yeah. And so, you know, that it just, those kinds of experiences allowed me to understand that I could use the spiritual world to help decode my reality.
Yeah.
And so, and I still believe that way. And I believe that way when I'm a practicing Catholic. And I believe, I just do tend to believe that way. Being raised the way I was, I'm very open spiritually. I'm not necessarily against, you know, wholesale against religious systems. There's parts I don't agree with, you know, and there's parts that I can't abide by and I can't believe in. But I think there's some beauty in a lot of things that I can embrace.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so I went from that kind of openness of we're going to do life to this, you know, hardcore Catholicism. And what got me out of Catholicism was when I was on bed rest with my child. I was in the hospital, and at that point, he had about a 20% likelihood of survival. And I was, and for the audience, he's now a thriving 14-year-old, but either way, so just a reminder. And so, you know, 20% survival chance at this particular point, my priest comes to see me, and he tells me, you know that if your child dies, he's going to go to hell because you did not get your marriage, you didn't get married in a Catholic church, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, all right. Thank you for that.
That's a bit heavy, but all right.
you can leave now, because I'm just like, I'm not sure how this is supposed to be comforting to me at all. And so he left, and about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes later, my sponsor actually walked in, and he's like, and he could tell I was upset. I was just like, oh my God, like, I cannot believe that this just happened. And he's like, what just happened? I tell him, and he's like, I'm going to kill that guy. Like, he's like ready to throw down, fucking kill the priest. And I'm like, he's like, how dare he come tell you this? Now, I mean, that's all part of the belief system, and I'm not excusing that, but I just was like, you know, if that's the mindset, I don't think I can be a part of this anymore. You know, whether that's true or not, I can't buy into that belief. And so I stopped going to church after that. And so, and it was just, you know, and around that time I had just while I was pregnant, I had gotten my motorcycle license. So I just like, I don't know, I spent Sunday mornings riding my motorcycle. So that was just the way I remember that. But yeah,
Completely normal.
you know, but I think going through those experiences of just all of these extremes brought me to a place of being very open spiritually. And I think that has allowed me to process stuff, me personally, and I'm not saying this is the right path for everybody, allowed me to process stuff in a way that allows me to kind of think really broadly about it and not try to fit it into a category of right, wrong, anything like that. And so, but I part of the work that I also did, I got sober, and I was like 13 years sober, I think, when I left and, went out on my own for a bit. From a work perspective, I'm now newly divorced. And I started down, just a whole nother path of training. I'm a Reiki master, and so I'm certified in Reiki healing work. I took a year-long shamanic training course where I learned a lot of just alternative kind of shamanic healing techniques. And, by definition, you think of a shaman as like the old wise guy in the old Indian movies, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's got this kind of this avatar of what a shaman is. And by definition, in most cultures, what a shaman is someone who can walk in both worlds, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And like that idea just really appealed to me to understand that at a deeper level. And so I explored that through a whole series of coursework and practice.
And how long did that take? Because that, to me, now I envision you like climbing in the mountains of Tibet and seeking out the wisdom of the ancient ones for like decades.
Right? Yeah, you would think, but no, for 1999 correspondence, you can be a shaman. No, no.
Give me that website. I'm doing this tonight.
Right? Yeah, it's just like, getting to be an ordained minister online. No, I mean, so this course was, it was never billed as this make you a shaman, because one of the principles of shamanic tradition too is you don't get to claim the title shaman. So I will never ever introduce myself as a shaman. I say that I've been trained in shamanic I can't even say it, shamanic traditions. I know some of the shamanic healing techniques, those kinds of things, but you only get to be a shaman if people ascribe that to you. It's kind of like being a warrant officer, right? Like you're not really a warrant officer unless people say you are. But I mean, either way, you're just like, and so this was a year-long intensive program where we met, we practiced, we had homework, we interacted, we did things like sweat lodges, we did, a lot of kind of intensive work on ourselves, excavating, the things that we had been through. And then, from there, it's what you do is you take what interests you and you then invest in further practice on what those techniques are that really interest you. And so for me, it was really a lot of the spiritual counseling side of it, because I was already a certified personal and executive coach. I had done that in 2012. And so for me, it was adding that aspect of just the whole person dimension. We're not one-dimensional people. Why do we just try to treat one aspect of a person? And so people would come to me and they would be like I had one gal, she was like, I want you to coach me how to divorce my husband. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Oh my gosh. I was like, it's not really what I do. I'll coach you and you can decide if you need to divorce your husband. I'm not going to coach you to divorce your husband.
Listen, lady, for $59.99, I will coach you to do whatever you need me to.
Yeah. And so I think that, what I was discovering during that whole time was that, this, like, I am constructing the course of my life. And I think prior to that point, I had largely felt a victim of it. Despite feeling very independent, despite making a lot of risky decisions, despite doing shit like, all the career decisions I had made, if you think back on my story, like the Army called and they're like, oh, okay. I came here to where I am now, sick. And I was like, yeah, I'll take the job because I'm too sick to go anywhere else. At a barbecue, I get offered a job, and so I'm just like, these things have just kind of fallen in my lap to this point. And I've just said yes.
Yeah.
And those have constructed a life for myself that met the definition of success. But my definition of success is different now. And so how do I construct a life that meets that definition? And so I became very conscious of the things that I was doing in my life. I started to really pay attention to it. And I developed a whole system of how to prioritize your life, that I would work with my clients on. And I would, and it just really involved in understanding what are those top kind of action area values for you. Like for me, just to give you an example, like my spiritual life, my son, my work, my family, those things kind of fall in for. And when I talk about my spiritual life, I relate my physical health to that because I believe there's a huge connection between our mind and body and soul. And so
most definitely.
Yeah. And if I'm not healthy on any one of those levels, I'm not, quite frankly. So I think just been my experience. And so, around that time, I started to realize that I had a choice, like a really big choice, a bigger one that I ever realized I had about what I allowed in and out of life. And so that's been a key focus for me over the last 7-8 years or so of what do I allow in and out of my life. The other relationship that I had to decode at that time was my relationship with money. Because I had a very strange relationship with it where, I grew up super poor and then I was making shit tons of money when I was working in corporate America. And I always kind of jokingly say I went from making 6 figures on one day to 3 figures the next. And then it kind of didn't get a whole lot better from there. And it's not to say that my business wasn't successful because it was, but I wasn't making 6 figures and I didn't want to make 6 figures because I was attributing making all that money to the misery that I had created in my life. Yeah. And so I still had a weird way of wiring shit together. It wasn't exactly logical. And so I started to, especially I think over the last few years, I've started to realize that I don't have to hold on to certain beliefs. And I was in a really strange relationship that I think I'm still learning the nature of, to be honest, for about 7 years following my marriage. That was, I think I can say with confidence right now, was a very toxic relationship, but not in an obvious way. Just in a way that I couldn't be really honest about who I was or what I wanted to be in life, that kind of toxicity. But it made me feel very small. And I'm not a small person. Physically, I'm a very small person, but in every other way, I am not a small person. Yeah. But that relationship, he was very, very narrow-minded, very, very Midwest attitude, to be, and that doesn't mean probably anything to anybody outside the Midwest, but, very conservative, very anti-risk, very, there is a way, Mandalorian, this is the way we do things, fancied himself an alpha, not pretty sure he's not, kind of person. But, just at his heart, a very, not a bad guy. I don't mean to paint an evil picture of him, but I allowed a lot of shit to happen that should not have happened. And my son the whole time was like the canary in the coal mine. He's just like, Mom, you just don't seem happy. Mom, that didn't seem right. Mom, what is going on? And I'm like, this wise little child that I have raised. An interesting thing about my son is that when he was in the womb, when I was on bed rest, very physically fighting for his life, I made a deal with him that it was him and I, no matter what. That was the deal I made with him as his mom, was that I would always look out for him. And I think all moms do that. I'm not trying to give myself any extra credit, but I think I had an intuition that life was not necessarily going to be smooth for the two of us. And there was going to be a lot of chaos and change. And I fulfilled my promise on that for him. So, we've moved a lot since my divorce from his father. And he's just rolled with the punches and he's been such a good kid. But he went through some pretty severe separation anxiety when his dad and I divorced, to the point where if I was not in the room, he would have a panic attack. It was really severe. And so we got him into some therapy. So what I hope he took from that is therapy is a good thing when you need it. I hope he learned that lesson early. But, and so today, though, like he and I have a great relationship to the point of, last weekend, I was like, I had the absolute toughest fucking professional decision I have ever had to make last weekend. I was offered what I would equate to be my dream job last Friday night. And I didn't think I was going to get it. Like I applied for it, but I didn't think I was going to get it. And then I got it, and it would have required me to relocate across the country to the Northeast. And I would have been teaching in professional military education. And it's what I have wanted to do for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, can this work? And Daryl and I have been talking about it already, and it was just, and I had been telling him the whole offer, no fuck, I can take it. Like this doesn't work well for any of the dynamics that I have in my life. I don't know. But then I got offered it, and I was like, holy shit, like how do I say no? And it boiled down to, for me, like, if it had been just me, I'd have been gone in a heartbeat. Like, I'd have been packed already on the road, like on the way there.
Later.
I'd be like, dude, we got to reschedule because I'm on my way. But, yeah. But, so I talked to his dad, and his dad had his own very strong opinions about why this was the most fucked up idea in the world. But, I said, but at the end of the day, the most important conversation I need to have is with my son.
Yeah.
And my son's response at first was, Mom, if he's like, I'm not going to go, like, I'm going to stay here because I don't want to go. He's a freshman in high school. And I was like, and his dad had said, well, it's okay. Like, leave him here, you go, and then we'll figure out if it makes sense for him to move. And I'm like, all right, so now my decision, where do I leave my son? Yeah. And, the narrative is mothers don't leave their sons. Good moms don't anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, there's that external narrative that I'm fighting. And then there's the internal narrative for me of, if I leave this child, I miss all the firsts that he's going to have as a high schooler. His first girlfriend, his first we have homecoming tomorrow night, but like his actual first homecoming in actual high school. Like all the firsts that are going to happen. And he's my only child. And so, I mean, I cried my eyes out again, and I was just like heartbroken. But Sunday afternoon, I talked to my son, and he said, if you got to go, then go. I don't want you to. He's like, but I'll be okay. And I was like, fuck. I couldn't you have just said, no way, I'm not going to be okay. And then
back on your shoulders.
People keep wanting me to be an adult and make decisions, God damn it. And so I'm like, and everybody in my life is pretty much telling me that, like, if you want to do this, like, we'll support you. And, and I'm watching my son, and as the afternoon's going on, I'm watching him be less and less and less okay as he's thinking about this more and more and more. And I had to take him back to his dad's family event we were dealing with. And then I took him back to his dad's because it's officially his dad's weekend. Yeah. And I dropped him off, and I just looked at him, and I was like, I'm not going. Like, there's no way. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I'm not going. I'm not leaving you. There's just no way. And so to me, that was like, it was almost like a test of, is this like, how true is this value for me?
Yeah.
And like, I think that there's, I don't believe in the idea that God tests us or the universe tests us. Like, I don't buy into that idea personally, but I do think that we energetically get reinforced on what's most important to us on a pretty routine basis.
Yes. Very true. Very, very fucking true. The world, what we think we want and what we really need, and when they actually fall in line are very few and sparsely in between. Like I can think of my life. There's all those times I wanted to do certain things or was looking for this right opportunity, and then it comes in my way, and I'm like, in all actuality, like, no, I don't want to start my OnlyFans page. Like, it seems like a good idea, but no, there's just not enough money in these damn foot pics.
That surprises me.
I have horrible feet. Greg, Greg always hypes me up, but I know the truth. I know the truth. There's no money in it, and I'm at peace with my decision to have just a podcast.
Yeah,
Uh,
so it's, I mean, and I don't know. I think that, over the last, when I started my doctorate, I think, I made some decisions about stuff that I was going to focus on. And that was just another reinforcing decision for me about, what is most important. But what was starting to happen too, like, so I stopped going to Alcoholics Anonymous a while ago. And not because Alcoholics Anonymous is bad or anything else. In fact, I encourage people who are struggling to go through that program. I also know it's not for everybody. Like, it's not something that I'm like, that's the only way, but it works for me. And there is and I think that there's some truth that it, works for a lot of people. But I stopped going because what I was going to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for, let me rephrase that. I wasn't going to the room to get anymore. I was going to give. And that's a turning point. Like, Alcoholics Anonymous philosophy is you're fitting yourself to be a contributing member of society. Like, that's really the intent of it. It's not that you lean on it for, like, if you are, my opinion, this is my maybe judgy kind of bitchy part, but I feel like if you feel like you have to go to 7 meetings a week for the rest of your life, like, probably not fucking covered. Like, you need to be able to be anonymous. And so I strove for that. And so I went and, I started to create just other support mechanisms.
Yeah.
And
I will, I got to make a note. I got to share with you. I have, it's not my story to tell, so I can't tell the full story, but I completely understand. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody say what you just said about AA.
yeah.
After we get off the show, I'll share my story with you because I don't want to record it and spoil it. But yeah, I have, luckily it hasn't, I'm not, let's just say that I've been with somebody and that was their thing. Like, that was the absolute number one thing for them. And I'm just like, fuck, at some point, like, something's got to give. Like, you got to be able to take the training wheels off. And I'm not saying that you have to, there's got to be a definitive point, but even with, because therapy's awesome. Therapy's great. And then you leave intensive, inpatient treatment, you go to intensive outpatient treatment, and then you're like, oh, fuck. Yeah, you got to venture back out in the world. Like, and then you still got to rely on your tools. You still got to rely on your therapist. But at some point, you have to be okay leaving the safety of that group, of that awesome support network, and testing the waters again. Knowing that if something goes completely haywire, like, fuck, I know where I can go. I know where I can go to get help. I know what I need. But part of the whole recovery, part of the whole journey is, at some point, you have to graduate from Padawan to Jedi Master.
100%. I mean, it's, and good solid programs allow you to evolve that way. I think, and I think that there can be a toxicity, because, I mean, think about it, like AA in particular, setting therapy aside for a second, but AA in particular, it's made up of a bunch of fucking sick people. Like, and so if those sick people stay sick, like, they're just going to continue to keep things sick. And so I just, like, there are, like, what I will, give credit to is there are some really great people in Alcoholics Anonymous who do maintain a foot in AA, but they've also built a life outside of it.
Yeah.
I tend to be a person of extremes. I'm either all in or all out. And so, like, for me, it was just time to go. And I was invited to speak a few years back, and I went and spoke, and it just, even that just I didn't feel connected to it. And I was just like, I mean, I just don't think this is for me anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and so, yeah, sorry, I'm getting text messages from Daryl, and he's sending me a lot of shit I can't read while I'm trying to talk to you. So, um, yeah, so I think that therapy, though, for me has been the same way. Like, I feel like if you are, I've gone to therapy a few times now, and I think working through that, like for me, it was important for me to have a goal. What am I working toward? What am I trying, what specifically am I trying to feel healthier about? What am I, what kind of things am I trying to achieve or accomplish? And I think that's a weird way to say that, because y'all become a checklist of like, here's the shit I've checked the list, and now I'm good. There's maybe a little bit of a middle ground with that. And so so I think that, being able to recognize that there's like, you're here to live your life for you. Like, you're not here to live your life for another group of people or another person. And, that was a lot of the theme in a lot of my relationships, was that like, I got into that relationship, and like that person became, it's not as codependent as it's going to sound. Became what I was living for. And it wasn't, that my life revolved around them. It was that like, I couldn't really do anything unless like they were a part of it. There wasn't, I lost some of that independence. And so like, when my last relationship ended, I, didn't go to another one part, because I was just like, and that was a weird deal too, because we broke up, but like we're still together like a long time. And so like, the relationship was over, but it kind of wasn't in a way. It was a weird deal. And so,
just kept subscribing to it.
It was just, it was like you're paying for the subscription show. And so, I think that what I was trying to figure out in that whole process was, how do I just be me? Like, how do I not, I'm not identifying the job I'm doing, the the man that I'm with, or any of this other stuff. Like, who am I? What am I all about in this whole thing? And, and I'm looking at all this, and I'm like, I'm fucking 46 years old, and how the fuck do I not know who I am? Especially given all the shit I've done to figure out who I am. Like, how do I not know that? And, and those were, worthy questions I was asking. But then to be honest with you, I got consumed by my doctorate, and my identity became doctoral student. And so when I first started working on my doctorate, I was focused on leadership in the cannabis industry. Having grown up with weed just being a normal thing in my world. It was really interesting, again, like I didn't realize it was. And then I, growing up, then what I actually also started to relate to was like, all right, dad's got money, weed and beer, but we don't have money for food. What the fuck?
Bullshit.
Yeah. And so then I decided weed was bad for a while. And then, like, funny story, my oldest stepson, my ex had 2 older kids. My oldest stepson, we busted him smoking weed and driving when he was like 16. And he was so obviously stoned. Like, it was comical how fucking obvious it was. So
get out of the car. I'm already out of the car.
Right, you're like 16. You're like, I'm good. If you stone motherfucker. So and I was like, that brought up a lot of anger for me when that happened. I was irrationally angry about that, and that wasn't because of anything that kid did. Like, this was anger stemming from my childhood. And so, it took me a while to get okay with weed, to be honest. I'm great with it today, for the record. So
very
I was
fond of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool deal. But it's too bad I don't live in a legal state. But so
what you meant is she lives in a completely legal state.
Yeah, it's very legal. So but I was interested in this whole thing with cannabis because my uncle is a big activist in the cannabis world, and they live in a legal state. And he and my aunt actually were the first people to buy legal recreational weed in the state that they live in. Like, it was a whole news story, what have you. He was editor for one of the news stations for their marijuana news. Like, it was just a thing that I started becoming aware of.
Yeah.
It was like, this is a really interesting deal because you've got, this plant essentially that is illegal at the federal level, scheduled as a federal crime. And then at the state level, we've got these legalities that are making it legal in certain areas at very kind of fucked up rules around that legality, but it's legal nonetheless. And you've got people going into this, for all different reasons. Some are parents who are seeing the value for their sick kids, like, the story of Charlotte's Web. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. It's a fantastic story. And then there's people, in California that they started as medical providers and they moved to recreational. And then there's the whole social injustice of, tons and tons and tons of Black people that remain in jail while the thing that they are in jail for is legal in the state that they're in jail.
Yeah.
There's
Meanwhile, Skylar, because her dad owns a fucking dealership, gets caught with fucking coke and she just walks away with a fucking slap on the wrist.
Yeah, I mean, there's just it's just such a. I mean, again, I'm back to complexity. Like, it's just such a complex issue. I'm so fascinated by it, and so that's what I want to study, and I want to understand why women in particular are going into this field, because you think about, what drives women to do things. It's a little different than what drives men with something like that. So I'm fascinated by this idea. Well, then the pandemic fucking hit. And I live in a place where it's not easy to just walk across the street and talk to people who are in the legal cannabis industry. And so I decided to change my topics, and I studied, I did what's called a grounded theory study, which means that I created a theory about what is going on with entrepreneurship in my local area for women. And so I got just really deep into that, and that became my thing, and in the meantime, I'm teaching, for the university that I'm also getting my doctorate through. And I'm also working a day job as a director of innovation for
shit.
And so, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Jesus.
I'm super fucking busy all the time. So the thing that Tim said during his interview with you guys that really fucking hit me was how, and I think I may have shared this with you time, just, we stay busy so that we don't have to deal with our trauma.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's me. Like, keep me fucking busy, dude. Because if I am busy, I don't have to deal with all the other shit in my life.
Oh God. Like, when I was going through my worst, I did a complete redo of my entire backyard, put together friggin' furniture. Like, I just did not have any bit of downtime. Now, where I'm at in my life, like, I clean the house and I work out and I'm like, man, I did a lot today. I'm like, woo, all right. Before, it's like so ridiculously hectic. Like, I have to read 7 books and I have to do these 15 other tasks today, or the world is going to catch on fire.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's, and it was starting to become like I have to do these things or like I'm not okay. And so what I started to change my language a while ago, and this may help other people too, but I started to, like, when I would start to get myself in that phase, I would start to replace have to or need to with want. And then that would really challenge me. Like, do I really want to do this? No, I fucking don't. Like, I don't want to do that. Is there another way? And so it would, and so that, that kind of helped shift the narrative a little bit for me. Learning, I'm a coach. I've been a coach for a decade. I've worked with all kinds of people, from CEOs to, people struggling. I've done, kind of, what's that called whenever you do stuff for free? Pro bono. Pro bono kind of stuff. And I've done,
rapist.
Yeah,
Full on rapist.
I think they call it prostitution. No, even they get paid. No, so, so either way, I've
dabbled in that in my younger years.
That was one thing I did not do. I always gave it away for free. So I've made top dollar as a coach, and I've made, nothing. And I'm, I've worked with, just as a result, a lot of fucking cool people, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so, and I've learned a lot. And what I realize is I can tell other people what to do. Like, I can give you the best advice in the world. And I've had people just be like, oh my God, you saved my life. You changed everything for me. That's so amazing. And I'm like, that's great. Man, I wish I could follow my own advice. That was that was brilliant. Like, why can't I do that for me? And so, I've had a coach for, over a decade. In various forms, and I don't function well without one. But I totally forgot where I was going with all that. There was a thread, I promise. Oh, we're talking about being busy.
Yes.
And so, so I, even today, I'm really busy all the time. Like, I mean, I still work, a day job, and I teach. I serve on a board. I just got asked to serve on another board. I'm the team manager kids soccer team. I've got 2 Labradors. I had to move into a house when I finally made the leap out of the old house with my ex. And, got a house that doesn't have a yard, for 2 very active Labradors. And so I have to walk them like 5-6 times a day, which actually is not bad. Like, it's really great for my health, and it's good. Yeah. It's like it forces me to take a break throughout the day, like to go be with these dogs.
Yeah.
My son's on a traveling soccer team, so we travel for that. My ex is a union boss, and so which you can make as many jokes about that as you want. It's hilarious.
I was just now I'm picturing like this dude that's like a little portly, or like his t-shirt doesn't quite cover his belly, chomping on a cigar with a little bit of balding up top, like. And definitely, like, the best years have passed physically, but like there's still a glimmer of hope. Like, he has a home gym, like he uses it, but doesn't really use it.
You're like so amazingly close.
Please tell me his name is Bert, because that's the first thing that came in my head now.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Oh my gosh, no.
Hey, Jennifer, it's Bert again. Give me a call.
And it's funny because it was and I don't want to focus on the relationship that I'm in now a lot, but it was an interesting kind of for me when I met the guy that I'm currently in a relationship with, that so when we met, like, he was on the same kind of crash course collision with himself that I had been on. Quite frankly, I mean, he's significantly younger than I am. I take because, like, why not? So I was telling my hairstylist, actually, I was like, so I started dating this, this new guy, and it's, it's going really well. And she's asking me about him, and I'm like, well, he's like 11 years younger than me. She's like, you cougar. But I mean, it's interesting because I will say that we've been officially together now for about 3 months, and it is absolutely hands down the healthiest relationship I've ever been in.
That is awesome.
And I think, the reason for that is because he and I told him this before we even ever started dating, was that, like, the thing that I realized destroyed every relationship I was ever in was the person I was with stopped trying to focus on their own development, and I became their crutch. I became their codependent person that would tell them what they were going to do in their life, because I am a dominant person. Yeah. I just am. And so in relationships, I'm not a dominant person. In relationships, I tend to be. Yeah. And, I told him that I was just like, I need you to, like, have your life. I need you to own your own, like, spiritual, mental, physical development in a way that makes sense for you. And I need you to continue to work on that shit, because you can't be excited, after going through the stuff that to get to the place where you are. You can't be excited about that and then down the road decide that I don't have to put in that much effort. And and he and I had a lot of talks about that, because I was just like, that's a big concern for me with where you are in life and the things that 6 months or so that I've known you. And so, but it was like, for me, when I met him, I had this to him. The first time that I encountered him was voice with no video. I had no idea who this. He came on the line and greeted me, and I was just like, "Who? Like, who is that? What is he about?" Like, every tuned into this voice, and I was like, "What?" And I was in a position where that was not appropriate for me to be thinking, and so I was just like, "All right, leave it alone, leave." and I wasn't gonna follow through on anything with that, and we talked frequently for about 7 weeks. And then, I didn't hear from him. And it was about a month later that he texted me out of the blue, and that kind of started, a whole series of conversations. And and I just knew, I don't know, I just that something was going to change for me as a result of hearing this voice. And I didn't know what that was going to be. It was just an intuitive thing.
I mean, you are a level 10 shaman, so you are in tune. You know what's going on, damn it.
Right? Yeah. So, but, so either way, like, today there's just like, I think, we're in a long distance relationship. There's 2,000 miles between us, 16 hours. I've driven it. It fucking sucks. Yeah. And that's hard. And so what we have established is just this really, just like, we tell each other shit, like, what you just said made me uncomfortable, or, like things like that, because it's hard when you've just got voice or even video to work with. I mean, you've been apart from your significant other, I'm sure.
Yes.
It's not easy.
My special person and I, if fun story, the healthiest, greatest relationship I've ever been a part of. And the testament to that is our time apart in our development as we were apart, and our ability to continue growing with all the fun distractions of actually physically being in the same place, and then continuing to be apart through deployments and rotations. But when I look back at it, like, I was always with my best friend. It just, we had to text, we had to email, Facebook Messenger. And now it's like, holy shit, like, all these years I had all these relationships with like direct face to face all the times today, but it was really truly like a relationship that I'm in now in my marriage it's one with, not only did I find the right person, but we both knew no matter what, no matter the distance, like, this is our thing. We're going to make this work. And we've consistently made that our number one priority through the ups and downs. Like, it was never a question of like, all right, like, that we both know that it's murder suicide if this thing doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have said that on the podcast. I mean, nothing. I absolutely love my wife. She's the best thing. She's coming around the corner with a kitchen knife.
She's like, all right, we're doing this thing.
Murder suicide, motherfucker.
No! Fucking waiting for this all day, god damn it.
But yeah, it always has that negative connotation, right? Being distant, and like, brings back the memories of people writing letters to each other. But you know what? It works. It does work sometimes if it's the right person. So if you're out there and you too are dealing with a long distance relationship, know that it can work out, and there is happy endings for people in those relationships.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is communicate. Like, and we have nowadays we have FaceTime and friggin' Zoom meetings, and you can schedule all sorts of things.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's what, we did, was just, have that conversation of like, you are the priority male in my life, and I am the priority.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality. And we communicate shit. And even if it sounds stupid, like, communicate it and use the tools and use all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, there also has to be a huge foundation of just trust.
Yeah.
Like, we're not there, when we're not there. And so, trusting that, like, what you're hearing is what's going on. Like, what choice do you really have? I mean, like, spend all day like, no, put the video on. I want to see where you are. Like, I mean, I just told him at one point, I was just like, dude, I could drive myself crazy trying to second guess everything that's going on, but I'm just going to choose not to do that. Like, I'm just going to choose not to. And I've been fortunate that I have a very flexible work schedule, and I was able to go down there for like 2.5 weeks, because he obviously doesn't, being on active duty. And so, I went down there for like 2.5 weeks in July. So, I mean, I think it's just, and again, I don't want to focus on the relationship a lot, but I do think for me, it has made such a huge difference, like in my life, being in a relationship with someone I feel on equal footing with.
Yes.
And that's super important, I think, for a healthy relationship, especially when both of you are dealing with health shit.
One thing I've seen in a lot of my a lot of friends where it's like, I want a strong, independent woman. All right, I can introduce you to one, and next thing you know, you're watching that relationship, and it's like, you insecure motherfucker. Now my wife's gonna never let me friggin' set up my friends with their friends. It's like, dudes, like, you say you want a strong person, you get in a relationship with them, understand that you have to be able to stand on your own. That goes both ways too, both ways. But I see it, and sadly, I see it in this little community that I happen to be a part in all the time, because guys don't realize that you can't measure success and value by what you wear on a uniform.
No, you can't. No. Well, and I get the distinct honor of being able to teach in one of the Honor Foundation cohorts currently. And, with the Honor Foundation, they're, teaching transitioning special operations service members how to go be civilians. And that's one of the classes, or the class I'm going to teach this coming cohort, is around, I'm blanking on the name of it, of course, right this second, but it's basically around how to culture and adjust kind of your mindset to that is one of the aspects in it. But that is the number one thing that I have worked with veterans on when I've worked with veterans, is that transition piece of like what I dealt with in my own transition, after 7 years on active duty, and, from conventional side of the military, big army, military, was hard. Like, it was really hard. And then you take someone with a special operations, and that's even harder. Like, there is a whole different level you're dealing with. And then you put all the baggage that we carry around from our civilian life anyway, and anything that's happened to, even outside of service, but just as a person. And like, you have just piled it up like one of those, like buses in India or whatever that has all this shit all over it, Like,
all that shit are people. They're human beings, damn it, Dr. Professor.
But that's, or that old picture, that was circulating for the longest time about how being our warfighter, right? Where you got the guy like kneeled down, he's got like 500 pounds of shit strapped to him. Well, that's the emotional baggage we leave the service with,
It's true. Like, the one thing we don't do a good enough job with, and I can see the effort that's being put into it, is the transition piece. Every one of my friends that I reached out to when we started this whole thing and started discussing like what we need to focus on, what the guys need, it's always not only just the identity piece, but that transition. Because for a lot of times, for our guys that got out in like the 2010s, 2011s, hell, even the early 2000s, transition was like, all right, here's a seminar. Okay, sit down. All right, type this in the computer. All right, that's how you web search things. All right, here's a certificate. Now get the fuck out. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, it's ridiculous. And I have seen changes. I am seeing changes. But we have to do more, especially for the current group of folks are about to be, the war's over, and there's going to be a mass exodus, and we need more Jennifer Murphys out there to teach us the ways of being real people again.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. Because I think when I got handed from art green to corporate gray, sweat on the ass and booted off post,
Yeah.
that was my transition. Um, and yeah, I mean, and what I had done, I mean, that was really the only way, that's the only way that I was able to translate my service into, civilian speak, was I hired a recruiter that specialized in that. And so that was how I ended up with my job. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dilemma, and one of the course I teach right now it's called Intro to Professional Development. And part of the emphasis in that course is critical thinking. And so what I've done in that course, because I have a lot of senior NCOs that come through that course, my courses are usually 95 or better % military. I have a lot of senior NCOs in those courses that are like, I'm going to be getting out in a few years and I want to finish my before I get out. I'm like, that's fantastic. So let's focus this critical thinking piece on how do we think differently than we think in the military? And so those are the kinds of conversations that I have. So like my favorite teaching that actually is we do a whole discussion on whether swearing is professional or not. And I could never introduce it without laughing because I'm like, and so, because I clearly cuss, like I've clearly dropped all the cuss words. My son is playing Fortnite. I'm not sure if you just heard that big slam. Clearly something bad just happened. Yeah, but it is life and death in there, I'm sure.
To be a kid again.
Oh God, I wish that all my problems were just on a computer screen. But yeah, so, we get into this module and I get a lot of opinions, like it's necessary. I have to communicate. Well, I can cuss in the military, but I can't civilian work. And it's almost like we're looking for these strict rules of yes and no. And what I try to do is just like bust the myths around some of that shit, quite frankly, because I'm not sure who started the rumor in this. That is patently fucking untrue. There is, I worked for an aerospace and people I worked with were veterans in the business area that I worked in, and it was, that was language. That was just how you talk to each other. You get certain meetings, certain context.
Yeah.
Like you put the polish on, just like you do in the military, quite frankly. Yeah. Like you put the polish on when you have to. But I wish I could figure out who started that rumor. There's some evil bitch in their basement. Like, I got them all believing this stupid thing that doesn't even fucking matter. But they're all talking about it. It's so dumb. But yeah, so we talk about that stuff, and we talk the way that we think, like what are the things that are in thinking, and how do you read things and read them in a way that allows you to see multiple perspectives. And so it's like, those are like my favorite modules, especially I actually like my current classes I have a lot of Rangers in one of my classes. So I'm really looking forward to that module.
Nice.
And it's actually, I have Rangers, I have like 4 Washington State Police, and then one guy that works at, like, it's a really interesting mix of people. And so, but it's, just having those discussions and really asking people to reflect, like, think about the way you think, and most of us aren't asked to do that. Like, we're just not. It's not a part of daily challenge to say, hey, well, where's that thought coming from? Who told you that? Where did that thinking come from? What's that based on? We aren't challenged like that a lot. We're challenged in other ways, but maybe not in a way that forces us to take a step back and think about where the thoughts came from. So I love teaching that class because of that. But there's just, I think that, if I were to kind of punchline, my life, and it's absolutely been like, it's an evolution. I think that everything I've done has taught me something that equips me for the next thing that I do, which equips me then for the next thing that I do. And I love to learn. And so I hope that I never stop being able to reflect on the lessons that I'm learning and apply them as I and my passion really is helping people do that. Like, how can I help you be a better thinker, a better person, achieve the shit that you want to achieve? That's what I want to do. And frankly, I think that's when I get into romantic relationships. That's why I'm like, okay, I see your potential. Like, amazing. And so I was just really deliberate, be very clear with Daryl about, like, that's my mentality. A lot of times I'm not going to do that to you. This is not what we're going to do. You get to choose how you want to.
I am not a guinea pig, damn it.
You're not my next experiment. This is, I mean, we talked about making my first husband go back to SF. Like, what the fuck? I still can't believe that ever. But that's either way.
Did he ever make it? That's the one thing I need to know.
He was in 7th group.
All right, so he made it. He actually made it all the way through. Okay.
Yeah, he was in 7th group because he was in 10th when he was an NCO, and then he was at 12 as he was an 18 Echo, and then he went back through, made it all. He was in deployed while I was deployed. He deployed with the team. And that went really, really bad. And he came back, and then because of what happened while he was on deployment, and so he actually left and went to, because he was just like, this, I've fucking done this already. He was in the first Gulf War, and he was done. He was almost 10 years older than at that time. So when we got married, I was 35. And then, so when he went back through the Q course and all that stuff, he was 37, I think.
Bless his fucking heart.
Fucking stud, right?
Fuck no. Hell no, Sarge. Not doing that shit again, no matter how easy it is now. I heard it's an online course. That's neither here nor there.
So this was in 2000, 2001, I guess, time frame that all that happened. It was pre 9/11 because he was in, I don't even know what he was 9/11. I can't remember what phase, but he was finishing up. But I think, from where I sit now, confronting PTSD diagnosis and being in mental health care myself, and understanding like the nature of how all that really has influenced all these other shitty decisions I've made through my life, like, quite frankly, I think, from where I sit now, I'm just like, I feel excited about whatever this next phase of my life is going to be. I've got a kid going into high school. I've got, like I said, the best fucking relationship I could ever have to. I mentioned to someone one time, he was a Ranger, he was betting, and I said, yeah, my boyfriend's a Ranger, and he's like, I hope you got a good one. How they do. And I was like, I think I got the best one. And and he's like, well, I would now we're drifting into inappropriate conversation. So, but it just is.
I will say he is an absolute gem, and I am so happy and feel blessed to have him as a brother and friend. It's surreal, and it's amazing the way the world works, and when you meet people and connect with them. So
it's crazy.
Our mystery friend, because you have him on the podcast till he's
only a few more years, right?
Yeah, just a little bit longer.
But you have to keep this going for that long, so he.
Oh, trust me. This is not only therapy, but it allows me to bring interesting people such as yourself into the fold, so people have more access and learn something. So, I can't thank you enough for.
Am I the first woman you've had on?
What's that?
I'm the first woman you've had on, right?
Yes. We have tried, and my wife said no. I'm not going to participate in your bullshit hobby. No, my wife's amazing. She's definitely coming on. Definitely trying to do a wife's episode. But the more the more interaction we have with everybody outside of the normal realm, the better it is for everybody who tunes in. We need everybody to come in as a guest, except for anybody named Randy. Skylar's not having you on, but yeah, I'm really excited.
Every time you say Randy, I think, do you watch Trailer Park Boys?
Yes.
That's what I think of every time you say Randy. I know that's not who you're referring to, but cheeseburger.
Just one of those names that just always stood out as like, man, Randy just seems like a guy from like Alabama that just has a lot of bad opinions.
Well, and I asked about the first one because I was pretty sure. I mean, I've listened because I just that you did Mike.
Yeah.
And I was, it's an interesting theme, and I tend to be the first woman a lot. So it was just interesting thing to me. And what I would tell, I don't know how many females have, but I do wish that I could hear more stories from women that would tell like the dark side of shit. Like I tend to do. Like, I mean, I think I shared a few things. There's not very like
it's just one of it's one of those myths. I fortunately have been able to have good female friends that really bring about the honest discussion of we're all humans. One gender, guys can't have a monopoly on self-destructive and destroying your lives and being a maverick. Women can be mavericks too.
Shit too. So yeah. No, I think I would love to hear more women being more raw, and not that it's, we don't, not in a forced kind of way, but just like feel safe enough, I guess, really is what I'm trying to say. Feel safe enough to be able to share that stuff about their lives, because there's always been that paradigm of bitch or a slut, right? And so that's not, and I feel, I don't know, maybe it's just from where I sit, but I feel like we're ready to move past that narrative
100%.
And, be able to have just honest, real conversations that, whether to your point, whether I'm a female, woman, or a man, how I identify, like I can have a fucked up life. I can have a good life. I can, like there's truth to be shared. And I value honesty and authenticity more than anything in the world. And so I think that, being able to have women do that is important.
And absolutely. And to bring our story to a close, I can't think of a more proper way of showing our devotion to equality than giving you the first choice of fuck, marry, kill. But here are your choices: Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, or Bill Clinton. Not like 90s Bill Clinton. We're talking Bill Clinton now, and he's just nothing but saggy skin, and he has the nipples of Hillary Clinton. Weird surgery to keep him alive, but the virgin blood transfusion goes to the nipples, so you had to get him for Hillary Clinton. Long story, but those are your choices for fuck, marry, kill.
Oh, man. I know, man. So I would kill that guy. Drives. I gladly kill him. I feel like I would have to fuck Bill Clinton just so I could get a hold of those notes. Like, I guess if I married him, I could do it anytime I wanted, but like, I don't think I want to marry that sack of flabby shit. So yeah, I would definitely fuck him, and I would say, marry Bugs, because that guy knows. So like, I feel like there's some good fun that we could have with that over the budding relationship. That's and those ears. Holy, she's got built-in sex toys. How did you pass that up? I hope my son's not listening. These walls are not that thick. My poor son.
It's normal. These are discussions you got to have with children. And I think I agree with all your choices, but I'm gonna fuck Bugs, but only with when he dresses up as girl Bugs Bunny, and then I'll marry Elmer Fudd. I feel like he can provide for me, and I'm killing Bill. I'm sorry. Once I see that weird, pasty white skin with transplanted nipples, I won't be able to keep it up. Yeah, he's done. The quick disclaimer I want to say, everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. Always rely on your tools. There's like our serious talk, the mental health series. There's been we've got a lot of discussions lately with a lot of friends, and I myself have struggled. Like I said, they're still doing therapy, still do sessions twice weekly. But one of those things that we have to get comfortable with is understanding that we have the tools. Once we go to therapy, once we go to intensive outpatient or inpatient, whatever you're doing, once you've seen the docs, you can't live in a bubble anymore, and we have to challenge ourselves. And I don't mean like, hey, I'm struggling with drugs, so I'm going to sit in this room with a bag of cocaine and see how long I can stand without taking it. I'm saying if you deal with anxiety, you deal with depression, you have tools. You have to go back to work. You have to go back and experience life. You have to go to parties. You have to go to those environments with a lot of people. And I'm not saying rapidly right off the bat, but I'm saying test the waters, use your skills, cope with them, and understand that you can swim, baby. You can swim, you can float, you can do whatever you need to in those environments. And if things get too out of hand, hell yeah, reach back out to your therapist. But understand that we were meant to thrive. We were meant to live. And the only way we can do that is by utilizing the tools our therapists give us, utilizing the tools that those professionals gave us, and going out there and living our lives. And at any point things get too crazy, go back to the shallow water, reach back out to your doctors, readjust, regroup, and then get back out there. Thank you all for listening. Jen, I can't thank you enough. I hope this is the beginning of a friendship between myself, Greg, Paul, and yourself, and we can bug you on all the things that we need. Because to be honest, I don't think Greg knows how to read, and I don't know how to do basic math. And right now, I think Paul is the only person who knows how to balance a checkbook, and I'm too scared to ask.
It sounds like we have a good reciprocal relationship that could happen here.
Once again, Jennifer, thank you so much for being on, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.